All right, welcome to Good Take. Wes Goldberg here, joined by Mike Shearer, the author of Basketball Poetry. Thanks to everybody tuning in live on YouTube. We're going to be doing this every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. So make sure you're subscribed on the RealGM Radio YouTube channel so that you don't miss it. Next week, we've got some good takes cooking up. But before we get to that, let's start with last night's game, Mike. The Cavs beat the Pistons in overtime. And before the game, this quote really stuck out to me. Cavs coach Kenny Atkinson boldly claiming, again, before the game started, that his team had momentum already in the series, and then they go ahead and win this game in overtime. Do you think he's right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue when you won 3 in a row, right? Like, I think he's definitely right. They got fixed, and I think, if you're asking me, the Cavs' success has been entirely tied to James Harden's success, right? They lost the 2 games where he played terribly, and then game 3, right at the end, he hit a flurry of clutch shots. People are like, whoa, what is this James Harden performance happening? Carried through with a very good game 4 game, and then was peak like 2019 James Harden last night. Anything that you look for in Harden, good or bad, was there. He scored 30 points. He had some beautiful passes, dominated the boards from his position, flopped everywhere. It was like just unbelievable throwback performance from James Harden. Didn't think he still had both sides of that in him.
It was a really good third quarter from James Harden, and it was a really good fourth quarter and overtime from James Harden. I thought it was a little rough for him in the first half where he was playing really slowly. He had as many turnovers as he had assists in this game, which turnovers had been down in the games prior to this one after they were up so much to begin the series. I thought it was a little bit of a Harden mixed bag, but the thing with James Harden is you need him to step up when it matters most, and that's always been the thing around Harden is he hasn't done that, and the Cavaliers just hang in this game. I thought the Pistons outplayed them for most of it. I thought their defense looked impenetrable for some of this game. Cade Cunningham just had, I think, his best playoff performance of his career. The best performance of his career, you could argue, given the stage and the stakes here with the series tied 2-2. And yet it didn't matter. And to me, the takeaway from this game is not only was it James Harden delivering in the clutch, down 9 in the final minute of this game. Evan Mobley was also really big. We can talk about him here in a second. But it was also the Cavaliers as a whole kind of getting over the hump, right? This was a Cavaliers team that always felt like they needed everything to go right for them to win these games in the playoffs. And a lot of things went wrong for the Cavs. The Pistons scored 1 billion points off of turnovers, most of which happened in the first half of the game. It was a bad Donovan Mitchell performance in this one. Like I said, it was a little up and down roller coastery with James Harden. The Pistons were playing great defensively for, I think, 75% of this game. Cade Cunningham was playing out of his mind. But the Cavs still just managed to get a win, and it was because they got enough bench contributions from guys like Max Strus. They got contributions up and down the starting lineup at different points in the game, and it was an ugly one. But they fought. They climbed back from 9 points down with a 9-0 run at the end of the regulation to send the game into overtime, and they found a way to get a win. And again, this is the kind of game the Cavaliers have not won in the past. And I do wonder, like, not only is Kenny Atkinson right when they clearly have momentum now in the series up 3-2, and teams that win Game 5 in this position win the series more than 80% of the time historically. So obviously they have momentum, but more than anything, to me, it shows that maybe they are finally starting to turn the page on some of their playoff demons here.
Yeah, it is nice to see them win ugly, and not for the first time this series. I'd say Game 3 falls into that boat too. To me, this series really felt like this game really felt like a missed opportunity for the Pistons, though, because there was not one but 2 major chances for Detroit just to put a foot on Cleveland's throat, and they let it go both times. The first was in the second quarter. Detroit did not miss a field goal attempt for more than the first 6 minutes of the second quarter, and they still only had an 8-point halftime lead. Yeah. If you go for 6 minutes without missing a shot, there just has to be a way for you to get more points than that. And the reason why is because all of their possessions felt like they took 20 seconds off the shot clock. And so unlike, say, the Cavalanche we saw in Game 4, where the Cavs just come down and bury you with all these rapid-fire threes and transition and things like that, the Pistons really had to work to get their points, even when the shots were falling. And it just felt like they had these chances to really go on a run, and they just kept slowing it down and backing it out. And they would eventually score. But when you have that kind of momentum, the other team is kind of back on their heels and can't score, you just have to be able to take advantage more in a stronger fashion. And the exact same thing happened in the fourth quarter when the Cavaliers didn't make a field goal attempt for 7.5 minutes of the fourth quarter. It took them until the 4-minute 36 mark for James Harden to hit a step back mid-range jumper. And then after that mid-range jumper, it was still only a 6-point game. The other team did not make a jump shot or a layup for 7.5 minutes, and you only had a 6-point lead in the fourth quarter. And that's just, to me, those were the two chances Detroit really had to explode the game open, and they couldn't put the Cavs away, and they just hung around.
Yeah, not to mention like missing every shot over the final minute and a half of this game that they took. And at the very end, there was that weird play where the game's tied after Evan Mobley hits the 2 free throws, and then the Pistons come down, miss their shot to take the lead, and then the Cavaliers come down. They have a timeout that they don't use. Donovan Mitchell drives it to the right side of the floor, and then Asar Thompson makes one of the best defensive plays that's going to just go overlooked and be forgotten. One of the best defensive plays of these playoffs, where he pokes the ball free from behind Donovan Mitchell, doesn't even let him get the shot attempt off, and he's getting the ball, and then he's tripped by Jared Allen. No fouls called. The Pistons coaching staff and bench goes crazy asking for the foul. You see JB Bickerstaff, you can see him mouthing like he tripped him to the officials. They look at it, they say nothing, and then the game goes to overtime. What did you think about that whole play? Because I thought, the Cavs should have called the timeout in that moment. I understand maybe not why they didn't, because I guess they didn't want Jalen Duren to come back on the floor for defense, which I would have been like, you can go ahead and bring Jalen Duren back on the floor. He wasn't that good this game. And
they didn't,
and they didn't. And then, obviously the no call there.
Yeah, a few things there. First off, like Cleveland has to learn that you need to design your entire crunch time offense away from Asar Thompson. It doesn't matter if he's guarding Donovan Mitchell. Right. Like if you have Asar Thompson was so unbelievable defensively tonight. And like he smacked the ball out of Donovan Mitchell's hands on his flyover gather or windmill gather or whatever you want to call it on one. And like he just kept poking it away from Mitchell behind. They couldn't even screen him towards the end. Like they couldn't even get him off him with screens on that play, I think. And like wherever he is, wherever Asad Thompson is, if it's a minute left in the game, just tell Donovan Mitchell or whoever it is to go sit on the wing on the sideline and keep Thompson out of the play. Going back to the foul though, like I'm so torn because it was obviously more fun for neutral fans to see this game go into overtime and be decided on the court. But I do think it was a foul. I do think the Pistons probably should have had a chance to get Thompson on the line. And, a tie game, 2 free throws. Thompson, notoriously shaky shooter. That would have brought its own drama. That would have been good TV. And odds are that he would have made one of them and won the game because there would have been virtually no time left after that. So I do feel bad a little bit for Pistons fans. As a neutral fan, selfishly, I'm kind of glad we got 5 more minutes of what was honestly a super entertaining game. It was a lot of fun to watch. Not the prettiest game, but a lot of fun. And I'm glad that we got to see it decided on the court, even if I'd say karmically, maybe it didn't go the way that it probably should have.
Asar Thompson is a 57% free throw shooter. I mean, he might miss both of those things. A bunch of people get free chicken and we go to overtime anyway. It's a foul. That's a foul. 10 out of 10 times when you get tripped, inadvertent or verdant, it doesn't matter. You get tripped, and that's a foul. And I kind of would have felt bad for Jared Allen had they called it because I don't think he meant to do it. I think he was just turning his body looking for the ball, and he ended up tripping him. But it's a foul, and I do kind of feel bad for Pistons fans.
This is also like the equivalent of every game-winning shot we ever see where a guy drives into a body, gets hacked, and the refs never call that either, right? I think
true.
This is actually very in line with the way refs typically call plays in the last 5 seconds. It's just it was in a totally different position than usual. It's not usually like a loose ball people are chasing on the sidelines. But if this had simply been, let's say, Asar Thompson barreling in for a game-winning layup and he gets hacked and nobody calls it, people would have been mad, but people would have been like, well, that's what happens every time.
Right.
So that's sort of the flip side of it for me.
You're right. I would like for the NBA to extend that to more than just a one-possession rule where it's like, you know what, final minute, 2 minutes of these games, that's how we're going to play. Like, let's let this thing be decided on the court anyway, because it gives the advantage to one team with the ball or without the ball or whatever. It's like, it's not really spread even. Like you need to just let these games, you got to call these games pretty consistently. Anyway, I don't like officiating is the worst version of sports radio, so we're going to move on. But back to the Pistons here. I think you're right. This was a huge missed opportunity for them. Not only do the Cavs get their first road win of what did they lose? The last 3 or 4 on the road in these playoffs?
All of them until this one, I think.
Yeah, all of them until this one. So, they give up home court advantage in this game. Cleveland has a really good chance now to end this series back at home over the weekend. This should have been a game that the Pistons won. You waste a great Cade game. Asar, to your point, was incredible, especially in the first half defensively. What do you have, like 3 steals in the first quarter alone or something?
And another 2 or 3 deflections that weren't steals either. Like, it was just hard.
Unbelievable.
Anytime the ball got near him, it got tipped.
He is so good at jumping passing lanes, especially those that specific passing lane where the ball handler has the ball up high and he's looking for that release valve, like that first pass, like that first side-to-side pass. He's just ready for it, man. Like, he's got quick instincts, lightning quick reflexes. Obviously, the guy's super athletic, and he's just able to jump those passes. And the great thing about those passing lanes is those steals are more valuable than any other steal because they're just runouts every single time, right? He's just alone by himself for dunks and layups. If we did good take 2 years ago when the Thompson twins first got drafted, one of my good takes would have been Asar is already going to be. I think he walked into the league a top 10 defender and wing defender, and I always thought he was going to be better than his brother defensively. I just think he's awesome, but whatever. They're both great. So
we should pause though and talk about the flip side too, which is like just how bad he was offensively. And this is something that the Pistons are going to have to figure out because like Amen has figured out some ways to be effective on offense, and Asar just has nothing. Like he's one of the worst like high minutes offensive players in the league right now, and it's not even that like he's so limited, like shooting. Obviously, that's never going to be fixed. People just need to come to terms. He's never going to be able to sit there and make corner threes. It's fine. There are other ways to be valuable, but he doesn't play with any force. He has no handle. He can't go anywhere. Like I think for a guy who had the ball a lot at like OTE or whatever and stuff, like his inability to do like simple dribble moves and just get by a guy with is concerning. Like he's being guarded by James Harden the whole time, and he couldn't get past James Harden, who like not the world's worst isolation, but certainly not like a quick twitch athlete at this point in his career. And even when he's in the paint, if he's not wide open, he can't go up and dunk it. He always, wants to do a tricky layup. Even the passing, I think, is not at the level it's supposed to be. I just am very discouraged with what we've seen from him offensively. And Detroit's in such a catch-22 because he is so unbelievable defensively, and they really need that. And he is wiping Donovan Mitchell out for like quarters of the time.
Yep.
But offensively, he's just such an anchor.
Yeah, and it's why JB Bickerstaff does this yo-yo with him with the rotation, where it's like some games he can't play in second halves of these games sometimes. And the unfortunate thing for Detroit in this one is they just didn't have any other options. It's not like anybody else was better, especially when you look at some of their perimeter guys. Tobias Harris was bad. They missed Duncan Robinson from the starting lineup. They started Danish Jenkins in his spot. Jenkins got off to a hot start. I think he scored Detroit's first 7 points. But they really missed Duncan Robinson as this game went on, specifically his floor spacing. The way that the Cavaliers have been sending to Cade for most of the crunch time possessions in this series, but they went way overboard on that in this game. And it didn't necessarily stop Cade, but I think it was something that they were willing to live with, right? They're like, hey, Cade's going to get his anyway. It doesn't really matter, but they'll send 2 or 3 to the ball at some points down the stretch of this game to get the ball out of his hands. It worked at the end of this game where Cade really couldn't get off a decent shot. I think the only shot he got off in the last couple minutes was like this long fadeaway jumper with 2 guys in his face. But they got nothing from anybody else. And because they didn't have Duncan Robinson basically lined up 1 pass away from Cade where they typically like to put him, I think the Cavs were able to load up on him even more in the biggest parts of this game.
Yeah, and you could see the toll it was taking on Cade as the game went on too. Like the scoring was so unbelievable, especially early on. He was just like tearing through Max Strus, who was very game and had a huge steal on Cade in overtime, and had some amazing energy, offensive rebounds and stuff. That sequence where he like ran from sideline to sideline to sideline and got 2 offensive rebounds was really cool. But like in the beginning, Cade was just kind of having his way with him, even with extra bodies coming. But like you can only do that for so long when every play is such a slog. And we talk about how every offensive possession felt like it took 20 seconds off the shot clock. I just think this is not the first game we've seen this series, not even the first game we've seen this playoffs, where he just wears down by the end and starts making these stupid mistakes. Like even small ones, like the toe on the line that changed the 3-pointer to a 2-pointer was a huge play in overtime. Obviously there was just getting ripped by Max Strus in the backcourt. These aren't things that happen in the second quarter. You know what I mean? And part of the reason they wanted to play Danis was just to give some extra ball handling. And I think that was a good idea, but it's still, especially once it goes into overtime, you could just see him like shoulder slumped, catching his breath. Like it was a hard watch.
Evan Mobley, 19 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 4 stocks in this one. Really big. Game. unbelievable. This was the good Evan Mobley, right? You've got the bad Evan Mobley, you've got the good Evan Mobley. The bad one is just invisible. The good one has shown up more often than not, especially I thought in these last 2 games. Specifically as a guy bringing the ball up, they're starting to let him facilitate a little bit more, and it's not crazy stuff. It's usually, hey, bring the ball up, drive a little bit, and then kick out to somebody around you. But even that gets him involved offensively, and you can see he kind of builds momentum with that. But then in the final minute of this game, hits a huge 3-pointer, a big dunk, and then 2 free throws to send this game into overtime. He was awesome in this one. And when you get this version of Mobley, and when Cleveland specifically taps into this, and they're able to play off of him in this way, all of a sudden, their offense just moves faster. It's less, hey, throw the ball to James Harden and let him slow this game down to this plodding pace, which is when I think the Cavaliers get into the most trouble. I talked about this on Tuesday's show. The reason I think the Cavaliers so often feel something less than the sum of their parts is because they slow these games down to such a grind that it allows opposing defenses to just catch up to them. They have so many guys who can create advantages, and yet when they slow it down, it just allows the other team to get guys in front of these other guys and remove those advantages, even if they get those advantages early on a shot clock. But when they're moving quickly, when they're making fast decisions, when they're driving and kicking, and they're playing with a tempo, this is the best version of the Cavs. And on the flip side, when the Pistons are playing this slowly, they are always going to play kind of slow in the half court, but when it gets when they're literally just grinding it down to the end of every single shot clock, that's where they get in a lot of trouble. And I actually think the key to this series has been which team is playing faster. And that might just sound dumb, but I really think in this series, it matters maybe more for either one of these teams, because the only way for these teams to be more than what they already are and the best version of themselves is to play with that kind of tempo.
Yeah, and I think, just the offense that Cleveland was running plays into that to some extent. You mentioned Evan Mobley's excellent game. The short roll was the story of Cleveland's offense today. It was Detroit was bringing a lot of pressure to Harden. Sometimes they would put 2 on the ball. Sometimes they would just have the big man come up to the level of the screen and then kind of do like a very high drop back. But Harden was picking them apart with the pocket passes, which frankly is maybe he might be the best in history at that particular pass. He's got 2 guys and he's trying to hit the rolling big man. I'm not sure there's anyone who's ever been better on such volume. And then Mobley would get it and make excellent decision after excellent decision. And this is something he's been tentative with in the past, and he's really grown into over the course of the end of last year and into this year. But we've really seen in this playoffs. I think he's had at least 4 assists in every game so far this series. He had 8 last night, which in the regular season, he only had 1 game with 8 assists. Last night, it was they were spamming Sam Merrill in one corner, Donovan Mitchell in the other, keep Asar Thompson the hell out of here. And then it was Harden up top, hit it to Mobley, and Mobley would run in, and he'd either lob it to Jared Allen, where he had a couple of really nice big passes down, or he'd spray it out to somebody on the corner. Worked awesome. I wonder if Detroit's going to be a little more conservative on defense in Game 6, if they are going to maybe try to make James Harden beat them with pull-up 3-pointers. I don't know that that's a strategy you love, but Harden's never been like a 40% 3-point shooter, he lives on those fouls, and he got several of them yesterday. Maybe that's the better. Maybe have your guy fight over the screen, have someone drop to take away these short rolls that Evan Mobley was picking them apart with, which that's not a strategy I would have suggested before the playoffs have started, but I don't know. They got to change something.
It's one of the things that was one of my other call outs on my Tuesday episode was I kind of want to see Detroit play more of a traditional drop defense to try to cut off these driving lanes. Not from just Evan Mobley, which is the obvious one if you've got Jalen Duren or whatever his center is on the court at the time, dropping to cut off that short roll, but also for Harden and Mitchell, obviously, too. The other thing I'd try to do is, as weird as this sounds after a good James Harden game, try and maybe top lock Donovan Mitchell a little bit and just, or wherever you want to do it, just to deny him the ball and just make it so that it's a Harden game. And if I'm the Pistons, I'm almost living with those chances because I don't want it to be Harden and Mitchell toggling back and forth because now I'm at a disadvantage. But if I could just force Harden to a really high usage Harden game, and then we're slowing down Cleveland's offense, and I'm dropping on defense, so I'm taking away that short roll from Evan Mobley. I'm just making Cleveland one-dimensional, and if I have to make Cleveland one-dimensional, that's the dimension I want them playing in, is that Harden variance in a playoff game. Anything else? I mean, Game 6 is pretty late into a series for some major adjustments, but that would be the only thing that I would really flag here.
I have a big one for Detroit on the other side, actually, and I think this will be a nice segue. We haven't talked about Jalen Duren hardly at all this discussion.
Yep.
He was benched down the fourth quarter, benched in overtime. Paul Reed went from playing 0 minutes in the first 3 quarters to playing all 17 after that.
Starting a conversation that I've now heard on the broadcasts and multiple podcasts, Paul Reed, greatest third string center of all time, ? Which I just love for just NBA nerds. Like, who cares? But it's so funny that Paul Reed has been so good that he's making that a national talking point. B-ball Paul, a left-handed hook over Evan Mobley in a fourth quarter of a do or die playoff game is just great theater. I love everything about Paul Reed, the chutzpah that he plays with. He does not care what the stakes are, what the stage is. He's always just going to bring it. But you mentioned Jalen Duren there. We do have to talk about him. We're going to take a quick break, and coming up, we got our takes, and I think Jalen Duren is going to be the topic of the next one. All right, it is time for Good Take, where every week Mike and I share our very best takes about the things in and around the NBA that we've been cooking up during the week. We've each prepared our own take, and after we share them, the winner of last week's episode will get the and one. As always, you can vote for the best take on the RealGM Radio YouTube community page. Mike, you're up first.
Yeah, so my take is about Jalen Duren, and it is that this is going to be the most interesting restricted free agency battle that we've had in a very, very long time. Restricted free agency typically isn't that exciting. There's a penalty for other teams that are coming in and they're making offers. They have the incumbent team can wait a day before they decide to match, and that money is frozen until then. And in free agency, things move fast. You can't afford to spend 24 hours with a massive offer sheet that is tying up your salary cap that you can't use that money then. So, but I think that this particular case could really stretch the idea of like what we can do with restricted free agency. So right now, Jalen Duren, he turned down reported offers of $30 million a year last year to bet on himself, which frankly at the time I would have been like, you just averaged like 11 points a game the prior season. Like maybe you should take the $30 million a year offer if it's on the table, but he didn't. And that is smart. He's going to end up with more than that, I think, even with his playoff struggles. But this is a guy who very plausibly could make all NBA, which would open him up to a contract that would be 5 years and $287 million if he gets a 30% max. He's not going to get a 30% max. All right. I think we can set that aside for now. A 25% max, however, still starts him at $42 million and would end up being something like $237 million, $239 million over the next 5 years. Whew, that's a lot of money to tie up in a guy who is having one of the worst postseason drop-offs in recent memory. His scoring average is down from almost 20 to barely 10. His true shooting led the league in the regular season. True shooting, mind you, has dropped nearly 14%. Now he's like below league average as a center who only basically dunks and lays it up. He had dramatically improved his turnover rate in the regular season. It's one of the keys to his success this year, actually, is that he just became an average turnover guy instead of a fumble it out of bounds all the time guy. Now he's fumbling it out of bounds all the time, and he's one of the playoff leaders in turnover rate. It's been such a dramatic turnaround. And on like a reasonably big sample size we're talking about now. This is 12 games. This isn't like a 4 or 5 games like stretch. And the Magic, sure, kind of a tough matchup. The Cavs are a team with more slender interior guys, and Mobley, defensive player of the year, et cetera. But Duren is bigger. He is stronger. He had one beautiful move last night where he caught the ball, aggressively attacked, spun off Mobley and dunked all over him. And you're like, why doesn't he do that, 3 times a game instead of once a series? So 22 years old. Again, he was the most improved runner-up. He's possibly going to be all NBA. But he's not a great three-point. He's not a shooter at all. He's improved his defense dramatically. He's not a great rim protector. He's not like the anchor defender that you want. Are you going to be comfortable paying him $40 million a year? I'll pause there for you. I have some more thoughts on this.
It's such a fascinating question, right? And it's so hard to remove the recency bias from this because now I'd be like, absolutely not. No freaking way am I paying Jalen Duren even close to $40 million a year. But you look at what he's been doing, 65% shooter during the regular season. He wasn't bad in the playoffs last year. So this isn't like a thing with Jalen Duren. He was fine in the playoffs last year for what he was last year. And then he made that dramatic improvement this year. and he was so important to everything that they were doing. And then we saw those moments where Cade was out at the end of the regular season, and Jalen Duren was even better, a hub offensively as a triple handoff guy and as a playmaker, a short roll guy. He was flashing that ability a little bit. His raw talent, size, and physicality is so off the charts too, where I'm just like, this guy's going to be a very good center in the NBA for another 10 years. I mean, he's just built like an absolute truck.
Yeah.
And no real injury history to worry about. So you think the guy plays a ton of games, plays a ton of minutes.
Well, here's a list of centers.
But then you get to the limitations of his game too, and it's like you can't. He doesn't have any of that unicorn stuff where you'd be like, now we're gonna pay him up at the level of an Evan Mobley because
he's the opposite of a unicorn.
Kind of ceiling. Right. This is the best version
no
of Jalen
3,
Duren,
no
I
D.
think. Yeah, no 3, no D. Like it's just like this is the best version of Jalen Duren, and that's okay. If he's this for another 10 years, it's a really good player, but it's not close to a $40 million player, I don't think.
Yeah, here's the problem is there's just a long list of centers who are inarguably better than him, and then a surprisingly long list of guys who are in his neighborhood. So Jokic, Wemby, obviously. Chet Holmgren has surpassed him pretty clearly this year, I think, at least in terms of constructing like a winning team. You'd rather have someone who looks like Holmgren than a guy who looks like Duren. Karl Anthony Towns.
Yep.
Bam Adebayo.
Yep.
I think Rudy Gobert pretty unquestionably better, even though it's a little trickier because Gobert's so limited offensively. But Anthony Davis, when healthy, maybe better. And then it's guys like Alperen Şengün, Joel Embiid, Ivica Zubac, Jared Allen, maybe, or Isaiah Hartenstein. Like Duren's not worse than all those guys, but he's not better than all those guys. So you're talking about someone who's going to be the 7th, 8th best center in the league next year, and you're going to be paying him 25% of the salary cap. That just gets the math gets so hard in, a 2-apron league where it's like essentially a hard cap.
The other thing I would say, he's 22 years old.
Right.
You just don't see teams walk away from a 22-year-old who's going to be one of these all NBA teams and has the kind of production that he has, right? He's not like a modern center where he's shooting threes, but the guy is going to be a 20 and 10 guy or an 18 and 12 guy for like the rest of his career. He's a natural partner with Cade Cunningham. He sets great screens when he's totally engaged. He makes the life of the star player, the face of your franchise, easier, and it's really hard to walk away from that player. Look, ultimately what I think is going to happen is the Pistons just pay him. But his restricted free agency is going to be really interesting to see if a team like, do the Lakers come in and offer him this crazy offer sheet, right? Like, to your point, I don't know the last time, like this is the anti-Jonathan Kuminga and Cam Thomas, right? Where it just felt like nobody was interested in those guys. And so we were just waiting forever to be like, are they going to sign a contract ever last summer? With Jalen Duren, I think if this is maybe closer to what the DeAndre Ayton restricted free agency was.
Yep, exactly.
In 2022, the Pacers made that huge offer sheet to him. The Suns ended up feeling like they had to match it. And even reporting after that was like Phoenix wasn't super thrilled about matching it, but they felt like they had to. And that was 4 years, $133 million at the time. You go back also to like Zach LaVine in 2018, where the Kings made that initial offer sheet and the Bulls had to match it. And even the reporting after that was like the Bulls were like, well, that was a lot of money for LaVine, but we kind of have to keep him. What's interesting to me about this is the new apron world, the new CBA. We're gonna get to a point where one of these teams, and I don't know that it's gonna happen with Jalen Duren, but we're gonna get to a point where a front office just says, you know what? No. You wanted to try to big ball us and come in with this huge offer sheet? Go ahead, take them. Now this contract is your problem. Again, I don't know that that's going to happen with Jalen Duren. I kind of feel like Detroit's just going to match it. I don't think that they're the front office to do this. But there's going to be a point where somebody does in the NFL. This happened with Kirk Cousins a few years ago. They don't have restricted free agency in the same way, but I think it was the Washington just said, yeah, we like Kirk Cousins, but we don't like him at this number. And you never see NFL teams just walk away from serviceable quarterbacks. And very rarely in the NBA do you see teams just let go of serviceable starting centers. And Jalen Duren, by the way, serviceable is like, insulting. He's a very good starting center. But we're going to get to a point at one of these times where in this new apron world, a team is just going to be like, we just don't want to tie up that much of our cap into this player. We'd rather actually start from nothing. Even knowing we don't maybe have the exact replacement for this player right now, we want to preserve the flexibility. But again, I think the Pistons end up just paying him.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tricky, though, because, Alperen Şengün, for example. So the Rockets are actually one of the teams that are most interesting because they have played hardball with their RFAs a little bit, not even by soliciting offer sheets. They just haven't given guys like automatic maxes off of, promising third, fourth years. So Şengün signed for 5 years, $185 million. Okay. That started at about 34. It'll be like 36-ish, I think, this coming year. That sounds about right to me. I think Şengün's a very similar player stylistically, kind of similar strengths and weaknesses. And then let's say that's the offer that Detroit wants to make. 5 years, 185. Maybe they'll throw a player option on like Houston did for Şengün to make it feel a little bit better. Would the Lakers come in and drop 160 and be like, hey, Duren, not only are we going to give you more per year, we will let you get to the market a year earlier when you're going to be 26 and can still lock in another massive contract. Would the Clippers do it? I think they might be an interesting one because they could free up a good amount of money. Yep. And I think, a guy like Duren would be a really nice partner next to Darius Garland and whichever player that they draft 5. Like, I think they're kind of a sleeper for like at least eyeing this situation. Could Chicago be interested? They have a hole at center, a massive hole at center. And, if they obviously have the 4th pick, but there aren't necessarily centers on the board there. So I think that they're a team that could be looking at this. Like, there are teams that would be interested in Duren more so than guys like, you mentioned Kuminga earlier or something like that. Like, I think Duren is a guy who will have value. And I think Detroit has to be careful because there is a winner's curse situation here, right? Like, whoever pays Duren the most is probably the guy who overvalues him. If you're that far from consensus, that means you're probably wrong. And so if you end up with too high an offer in the apron area, you just cripple your team for a long time with contracts these long. So I don't know where they're going to go. I suspect you're right. Like, it's just so hard to let go of a 22-year-old guy who's on the rise in, all NBA. But there's a very real chance that a center who never becomes an elite shot blocker and never develops a jumper just puts a floor or a ceiling on your team that is too low. And if you're a team with a top 5 guy like Cade Cunningham, and you know how I feel about Cade Cunningham, like, I think that's a guy who definitely can carry a team right through to a championship. You have to be really smart about who you put around him during his prime. So that's all I'm saying is I'm going to watch it because I do think there's a lot of interesting pieces.
The other part of this too is if you're trying to build around Asar Thompson.
Yeah.
It's now our top 3 guys, 2 of them are complete non-shooters. Like, do we and Cade, as much as he's improved as a shooter, that's not really his teams. Like, I think we're gonna get to a point where teams are gonna there's certain matchups where teams are just gonna go under on every Cade screen and just dare him to beat him from beyond the arc. It feels like you need an elite shooter around Cade at one of those spots. Now, again, just because you re-sign Jalen Duren as a restricted free agent doesn't mean that you can't get there at some point. Like, even if you re-sign Jalen Duren now, you could trade him later. Again, all NBA center, 22 years old. You can get 2 years into this contract and flip him for a better fit. If you just let him walk away for nothing, now you're losing that potential asset. But it is something I think that the Pistons are going to have to consider here.
I think offense first centers are a lot like a new car. They lose value the second you drive them off the lot, especially since we've seen over and over again that if you're not like literally Nikola Jokic, you're not going to be as good in the playoffs as you are in the regular season. Like, how many guys who look like this have been better in the playoffs, where it's like they're offense first guys who can't shoot. It's like Alperen Şengün, DeAndre Ayton, like Jakob Poeltl isn't really offense first, but like, I don't know, man. I just think that like there's a real chance that they go another year. Duren has another bad postseason. And then they're like, uh-oh. And other teams are like, uh-oh is right. You know what I mean?
Right. So it's true. You risk the asset sort of diminishing there. Do you think that Jalen Duren can become a good rim protector? Because there's no reason why he couldn't. He's got all of the skill, the size.
I think he can become a good defender. I think and we've talked about this. This was one of my hot takes, one of my good takes from 3 or 4 months ago, is that he had dramatically improved defensively. Yeah. And I think that's true from a controlling the space, understanding where to be, hitting the boards. I do not think he'll ever be an elite shot blocker, rim protector. I don't think he has quite the instincts for it. Like, it's a lot easier to become one of those guys if you come in blocking every shot and fouling the crap out of everybody and you learn how to tone it down to the appropriate level than it is to go from being a non-shot blocker to an elite one. That kind of leap almost never happens. He takes a little too long to load up on his jumps and he just doesn't have like the instincts for it. So I think he can become a plus defender, but I'm not sure it is the kind of plus defender that lead to real rim protection, which is kind of what you need in the playoffs.
Yeah, I wonder if Detroit's scheme isn't really serving him in a lot of these matchups too. Like, if they were going to just aggressively drop him and just let him kind of be 7'1" by the basket, I wonder if that would be a little bit better. But you're right, there is a little bit of, is he the Michael Jordan of DeAndre Ayton's thing happening right now with him? And as good of as a player as that might be, there are inherent limitations to that. It's going to be a fascinating restricted free agency, and you're right. I think there's a ton of teams that could talk themselves into him. Anything else on this?
No, I think I'm good.
My good take is next. All right, I'm up next with my good take, and I think we're talking about the Spurs all wrong, Mike. Every conversation starts and ends and is filled all in the middle of those two bookends with Victor Wembanyama. He is the capital letter at the start of the sentence. He's the commas in the middle, and he's the period at the very end. I get it. 7'5", unreal skill set, number 1 overall pick, probably the best player in the NBA by the end of next season. But we do forget that a big part of this team is the number 2 overall pick in what was a stacked draft this past summer. And that's Dylan Harper. And I want to start by reading you a tweet from friend of the show, Jay Kyle Mann, who tweeted after the Spurs' latest playoff game, Dylan Harper is going to be the best finishing guard in the league. It's just a matter of how soon. And that got me thinking. And I actually want to take it one step further. He might not just end up being the best finishing guard in the league. I think he might end up just being one of the best guards in the league, period. The guy is a two-way player. He competes defensively. His size is a huge feature of his. He's got a great handle, loves to get to the basket, awesome competitor. He's going to develop as a shooter. All of the touch metrics for him, whether it's the float or the free throw rate, all that kind of stuff, all say like he'll get better as an outside jump shooter. And I think with Dylan Harper, who again, the number 2 pick behind Cooper Flagg, one of the generational prospects of this decade. Dylan Harper goes number 1 in most drafts. You're building around the generational prospect of this generation in Victor Wembanyama, but Dylan Harper ain't no slouch, man. Like that guy comes with a high pedigree out of high school, in college. You have seen guys in this Dylan Harper space drafted to other teams where there is no Victor Wembanyama immediately handed the car keys and being like, you are the future of the franchise. And a lot of times guys like Dylan Harper end up being the futures of those franchises. One of the best lead guards in the NBA. He's got everything you would want out of a player who could run your offense. And I think what that means for the Spurs is really interesting, because the dynamic duo of Victor Wembanyama and Dylan Harper is the future of San Antonio. It's not just Victor Wembanyama. He's certainly the headliner. He is the main attraction. But Dylan Harper is right there. And I do not want to put a ceiling on how good Dylan Harper can be, just like I won't put a ceiling on how good Wemby can be. If you let me pick any current duo in the league to build around, I don't think there's any question I'm picking Wemby and Dylan Harper. And by the way, that could also be true of Wemby and Stephon Castle if you really want to do this. Wemby is just that good. But
Wemby and Champagne. Yeah, I'd probably pick, just give me Wemby and any other guy. And that's the duo that I'm probably picking.
But the point of Wemby and Harper is this might end up being one of the league's best long-term partnerships in decades. And I was trying to think of like, when is the last time, because you think about the great duos in the league that we've seen, right? Whether it's LeBron and D Wade or Durant and Steph or whatever. Those were short shelf life things. We haven't really seen two guys just age together. I think the closest thing we have is probably Steph and Draymond, but that's a different version of what I'm talking about. Like, that's not a dynamic duo as much as it's a complementary one. This is just a duo that's like, what do we do with this?
Yeah.
Like
Jason and Jalen maybe, but they're kind of the same-ish archetype as opposed to these naturally fitting hand and glove things.
Well said, right? So I went back 30 years. 30 years. I think what we're watching right now with Wemby and Harper might be the next Kobe and Shaq. And is it a coincidence that Dylan Harper was drafted exactly 30 years after Kobe was drafted? Yes, it is. But I think it's a cool round number that I'm willing to point out here on the podcast. I think the Spurs are sitting on the next Shaq and Kobe with Harper and Wemby. That's my good take.
I think it's fascinating because I do think that in some respects Harper and Wemby fit together as beautifully as you say, but part of that is because Wemby just opens up so many avenues. Because I do think the one thing that if you're nitpicking Harper, which after an amazing rookie year, there's no reason to, but you have to when you look about these things, you project the future, right? Like you kind of do need to think about it. And is the shot for real? It's come on very strong in the second half of the year, but he's still very low volume. Not enough sample to determine it. And like you said, everything points to a positive improvement in the next couple of years, but you never know. Wembanyama being so capable from outside is part of the reason that Harper is able to get into the lane and try all these crazy finishes. And what's funny is his finishing numbers aren't necessarily that great. Like I was just looking at it earlier, and he's like about the median for his position on cleaning the glass around the rim. But part of it is because his degree of difficulty is so high on a lot of these. And I remember early in the year, I can't remember who said this. I wish I did. But somebody was talking about how they think Harper has a little bit of the Kyrie Irving, Tony Parker mindset, where he's like, I could take this normal layup, or I could turn it into a spinning reverse with an insane amount of lefty English. And he chooses the latter route.
Right.
So sometimes he makes it a little harder than it needs to be, I think, in a way that feels like he's testing his boundaries and figuring out what he can and can't do still, which I think is a great sign for the future. Obviously, it hasn't made him less effective today. But I keep coming back to, like, as amazing as Harper is, as well-rounded as he is, like, I still feel a lot of the same ways about Castle. And I think it's going to be so fascinating to watch those two grow and evolve around each other when they have very similar strengths and weaknesses. They're not the exact same player, and I don't mean to, say that they can't coexist by any means. I think they definitely could, and I think you just, like I said, have so many options when your center is such a strong shooter, when your power forward is such a strong shooter. Like, they get all their shooting from the front court, which allows Castle and Harper to be the best versions of themselves. But I think it's just funny because we can have a very similar conversation about Wemby and Castle in 5 years, and it would not shock me, right? Like, Harper's a little more careful with the ball. I think he's not as adventurous with the passing as Castle, which might just be because he's a rookie and he's still trying to figure out what to do. He doesn't get as many minutes with Wembanyama as Castle does, which might be part of it too. But I watching those two go side by side and figuring out, like, who ends up being sort of the quote unquote alpha ball handler out of them once the Fox era is over, whenever that is going to be, like, just a really interesting watch, because I think both those guys are going to be so good.
I think Harper has something that you can't teach, which is just his tempo. He slows things down. He's so patient. His ability to just be patient with the ball in his hands just belies his age.
Yeah, much more under control than Castle, for sure.
Much more. And, he kind of has to do it, I think, a little bit. He's got to be a little bit slower with the ball. He's not this crazy explosive athlete. He doesn't play above the rim. Like, Castle is a much better athlete, just a raw athlete, than Harper. But I think with Harper, there's a little bit of, like, this Luka Shea quality to his game where he's able to just bump guys off his spot when he gets to his spot, especially when he gets into the paint. He's really strong, and I just want to see what that next step for him is obviously he can finish at the basket, but can he master that 6 to 10 foot away from the basket range the way that Shea and Luka have mastered that range? Because that, to me, is the domain of the star player now. It's that short mid-range area. And if you're able to convert from that short mid-range area at a layup type rate, now we're talking about crazy efficiency. We're talking about getting to the line a whole lot. Like, those are the things that I think Dylan Harper can do. And if he unlocks all that stuff, which, again, I think he will. I think he will unlock all of that. But I'm more interested in that part of his game than even the three-point shot or even figuring out some of these other things. If he figures that part of it out, forget it. And it's such a great point that you make about Wemby, like the way that they just go hand in hand here, where Wemby, like this inverted offense where Wemby's spacing the floor at times and Harper's able to get to the basket. That just makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up like that 8-foot range, because I do think that one of the interesting things about Harper is his signature move is quickly becoming this pogo stick, TJ McConnell-esque 8-foot jumper. Like, not really a huge floater game in Harper's bag, which is unusual. Like, I don't watch any college, but I think of a guy who attacks the rim, a big oversized point guard. Those guys always have these awesome double-handed floater games, right? Like, but he doesn't really do that. He wants to get there, and then he just stops on a dime, rises straight up, and shoots like a normal jump shot for 8 feet away. And it's an interesting trademark move. You don't see too many guys in the NBA these days with it, because the floater is just so commonplace now. And I just think it's a fun quirk of his game. I like watching it.
Yeah, it's like a jump stop into a pogo stick jumper. It's straight out of the TJ. You're right. It is the TJ McConnell. I never put it together that way. But what this means for San Antonio going forward potentially, because I think, first of all, I'm not trading for Giannis, and I'm not trading for Durant, and I'm not trading for any of these players if I'm the Spurs. Like, that conversation is long over. Like, we're just not doing that. We could win the championship this year without those guys, so we're not doing that. And all of our best guys are only going to get better. You are starting to hear some stuff about, like, well, what do they do with De'Aaron Fox? That is a good problem to have if I'm San Antonio, and I'm not making any decisions on that until I absolutely have to. And I don't have to for a while. Dylan Harper is coming off the first year of his rookie contract. We have a minute until we have to make any of those kinds of decisions. Now, maybe there's some decisions that have to happen before that in terms of who we starting, who we bringing off the bench, and things like that. And that's a different kind of conversation. But in terms of like the De'Aaron Fox part of all this, I'll take all three of these guys on my roster right now, no problem, with Victor Wembanyama, and I'll enjoy that for now.
And these rumors started the second they drafted Harper too, because it's like you have three guards, and I've been a big
even before they drafted Harper because everybody knew they were going to draft Harper.
Right. You've got three guards who none of whom are like dead eye shooters, all theoretically best with the ball in their hands. How are they going to coexist? And I give so much credit to Mitch Johnson, who I picked as my coach of the year. That was not a popular one clearly, but for his ability to juggle having these three guys all make sure that they all get fed, that all three guys feel like they have a clear role in the offense, that they all are able to take their turns without, sacrificing anything from Wembanyama either. Like that's a hard thing to do. And I think Johnson has really nailed it. But I'm not as high on the timeline as you. I think they don't need to panic. They don't need to make a panic move this year, but I think they need to be thinking about how do we turn this from a championship contending roster to a surefire favorite that people will pick over the Thunder without question going forward. Hard things to do, but you have to be worried in the back of your head about Wembanyama's health. And just like, you know what I mean? Like there's not a horrifying like previous history, but he hasn't been like bulletproof either. And just, we know the history of guys that big, or like we really don't, because guys don't get that big, but it's not great. And I also think that the aprons just always make the window shorter than you think, even with Castle and Harper on their rookie deals. Other guys are going to get more expensive. They're going to have to find shooting. Shooting doesn't come cheap, and you need it in the front court, so you're going to need positionally scarce shooting. I never want to assume that the window will be long in the NBA. Doesn't mean you make a swing for a superstar, but it means you need to be aggressive with medium moves.
If there is a move out there to go get a wing that is a two-way guy who can help space the floor a little bit, and it costs me De'Aaron Fox, I would consider that. But I'm also not aggressively shopping them, being like, oh no, we got to get off this guy. Was I being disrespectful to Shea and Chet when I mentioned best young duos in the NBA?
Right now, yes, because you're talking about two All-NBA guys, right? Shea's the MVP, and Chet is third-team All-NBA. I also think that if you are projecting, it is very easy to take your case and say Wemby is going to be better. He might be better than Shea right now, whatever the MVP says. I don't really want to wade into those waters, but people would argue he is better. And I think it's very easy to project a future where in 2 years, Dylan Harper is an All-NBA guard and can't be stopped and is scoring 25 and averaging 7 assists a game. So I don't think it's a crazy thing to say. I think it is wrong today, but I don't think that's what you're saying, right? I think you're saying that going forward, this is going to be the best duo in the NBA, growing together hand in hand type thing for the next 5 years. And I think that is a very reasonable hypothesis.
I've got the and one this week. My and one is that all of this outrage about the Pacers losing their pick, it's a whole lot to do about nothing. Mike, I get it. I understand that Pritchard came out, issued the apology to the Pacers fans for losing the 5th pick. He was surprised, which was a strange choice of words, I guess, because like you literally traded for this possibility. But
no one's surprised when they flip a coin and it comes up heads instead of tails.
Like, that's crazy. I thought for sure I chose tails. That's so weird. Like it's, I can't get there. And I've seen stuff written about like this is a major gaffe by the Pacers organization and they just don't understand. Like they thought they overvalued Zubac in this horrific way. I just can't get there with this because at the end of the day, the Pacers were in Game 7 of the NBA Finals less than a calendar year ago. They're bringing Halliburton back. I think Zubac is an awesome fit for what they have. They're bringing back Nembhard, Nesmith, Pascal Siakam is awesome. And it's not like they lost this pick, but now they get to keep their unprotected, what would have been an unprotected pick in 2031. And who knows what that, like we could be looking in 2031, 2032 and be like, thank God the Pacers kept that pick. So, it's really hard to project forward for what that could potentially mean for them. I just can't get there because the other part of this too is it wasn't a top 4 pick, which the Pacers protected it specifically for that reason. They thought that there was a clear drop-off after the top 3 or 4 in this draft. And I think there is. And I don't see anybody on the board at 5 to 9 who I'm like, yeah, that player would have been awesome for the Pacers. Now, does one of these players end up being great and a future All-NBA guy? Absolutely possible. Could one of these players have helped the Pacers? For sure. But I also don't need that kind of player on a team with NBA Finals aspirations. I actually kind of feel pretty good about not having to deal with this like weird Kuminga type of situation where it's like, hey, we've got this veteran team with finals experience. Now we got to figure out a way to work in this young player. It would have been nice to have that player, sure, but I'm not I can't just do the full outrage thing that I'm seeing out there. So my and one here is almost the opposite of a hot take, Mike. It's the Pacers lost the 5th pick. Whoop-de-doo, not a big deal. Let's move on.
Yeah, I have a slightly different slant, which I think it is a big deal, but I think they took what they thought was a championship swing. The Pacers were right there in the finals. They can't assume they're going to be as good as they were last year because Halliburton's obviously coming off a major injury. He's got the shingles issue. Like, Siakam is older. You should not assume that you are going to step back into this as a, microwavable contender. So they were like, how can we improve our team twice? Let's keep a very high draft pick. Let's go out and get an awesome center that can, fill a hole that we desperately need. Those are the kind of moves you have to make if you want to win a championship when you're starting at a talent deficit to teams like the Spurs and the Thunder. I think it's a very admirable swing. And guess what? In baseball, you miss a lot more than you hit. And in basketball, unfortunately, with swings like this, like that's going to be the case too. Like that, there's a reason 1 out of 30 teams win championships, and it's because they're a combination of good and lucky. The Thunder didn't know that Shea was going to turn out like this when they made that trade. Like they hoped he'd be good. They didn't know he'd be a future MVP, like all-time scorer. Like they just got lucky with it to some extent. And the Pacers were hoping to get lucky too. And if they had gotten the 5th pick, I think they could have found a guy who would have been really helpful. I think they would have been able to reassert themselves at the very top of the East if Halliburton comes back healthy, which we don't even know, in which case this is all moot because if Halliburton's merely okay instead of amazing, this Pacers team isn't going to be that good anyway. So I can't get upset about it either, really. I can be sad if I'm a Pacers fan. I'm devastated. Like, I think this is a huge blow, and I think they should feel sad about it. But it's understandable, and I think in some ways it's like going for it on 4th and goal, to use yet another sports metaphor for some reason. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you're down 3 and you go for it anyway instead of kicking the field goal. Like, yeah, that's kind of what you want to do. Like, you want to be aggressive. You want to make these big swings you have to do. But you're not going to hit them. You're not going to hit them most of the time. And so it sucks for Pacers fans, and I feel bad. But I don't think that should diminish what I thought was a very admirable attempt to have their cake and eat it too.
It's a scared money, don't make money type of approach.
Exactly.
And I get it. And to me, the biggest thing for Indiana going forward is just Halliburton's health. That's the only thing I care about if I'm the Pacers is this guy going to be what he was prior to the injury? Because just because Tatum came back and was just as good doesn't mean Halliburton. You hope, and I expect, because Halliburton's age and everything, you hear about his approach to this, but it's not a guarantee, and that's the most important thing. So in that respect, maybe that's where you would have wanted the 5th pick. But then again, like, you can't project, like, are you going to approach the 5th pick differently before you even see what Halliburton looks like when he comes back at the beginning of next season? No, you actually might prefer to have that pick in 2031 if Halliburton's a shell of what he is. Then the whole future of your franchise is kind of kaput at that point. Mm-hmm. And so you'd rather almost have that future pick in that way. So, yeah, I get it from the Pacers. I understand, like, you just, like, as a Pacers fan, I understand the whole thing of, well, we just went through this horrific season of just losing every game. It was just this incredibly deflating experience. At the end of it, it would have been at least nice to get excited for this draft, and now we don't even have that. I get it, but it's about, like, look forward to next year. It's about Halliburton's health, and then having Zubac and Siakam and everybody else on that team. You at least have what should be a very good basketball team to look forward to next season. So that's why I can't get too worked up about it. It's time to say goodbye to yet another playoff team and talk about the checklists that they need to look at for those who started their off seasons last week. We laid out our 3-item checklist to fix the Denver Nuggets this summer. Today, we're talking about the Lakers. Mike, I usually kick things off, but I'm interested to hear your approach to this.
Well, I think the first one is going to be the clearest, which is figure out what the hell's going on with LeBron James, right? I think the Lakers are interesting because they're not a very complex team to talk about this year. I think their holes and, like, what they need to do, their holes and sort of like the things they need to tackle are very obvious. How they go about doing that, much less obvious. I don't think LeBron knows what he wants to do yet, right? Like, is there a better situation out there for LeBron James than Los Angeles? Maybe you'd say Cleveland. Another homecoming might be fun. But this was a team that really found itself down the stretch. I think LeBron James transformed himself into this sort of like off-ball cutting monster who fit beautifully next to Reeves and next to Luka Doncic. You can point to, like, are they going to be as good as the Thunder next year or the Spurs? Probably not. But can they were the 4 seed this year. Like, they can absolutely expect to be as good as that next year if they're able to fit, address some of these other things. So, my first one there is, like, I think they just need to figure out what they want to do with LeBron James. Number 2, very closely related, do they want to bring back Austin Reeves at the price tag he is going to command? This is a guy who has always, gotten major buckets no matter where he is, but he's been even better next to Luka Doncic, despite what people think. Like when they added Luka, people were like, oh, what's that mean for Reeves? They're both kind of like want to play in the same way and do the same kind of things. But it turns out that they have been very complimentary. Luka loves him. Luka has asked the Lakers to bring back Austin Reeves, which notably, I think he didn't necessarily say that about LeBron. So that's something to keep in mind. But I think that like trying to figure out what you're going to do with Reeves is important because he will be a highly sought after kind of guy in the free agent market, not only because he's a very accomplished bucket getter who has proven that he can go up and score efficiently when he's able to run the offense by himself. Don't forget about when he just tore the league up when Luka and LeBron were both out early in last season before his own injury troubles. But he's also a guy who, let's be honest, is going to sell a lot of jerseys, be very popular. Like I think that like if you're a team that struggles to drum up interest, like say the Brooklyn Nets, getting a guy like Austin Reeves would be, a big boon on the business side, much less whatever happens on the court. And he's the kind of guy who might be more valuable now, even as a number one option, since being bad is no longer rewarded the way it used to be. Floor raisers like Reeves, and maybe that's not a fair way to put him, but like you have him out there. Maybe he's not quite good enough to be the best or second best player on a championship team, but getting you out of like being the worst team in the conference, like the East, would be helpful. So I think that there will be teams that go after him. The Lakers need to figure out if it's going to be worth it for them to keep him at, a near max valuation. We're talking 40 plus million a year. And then the third thing I had was just figure out what the hell is going to happen at your center position. DeAndre Ayton, classic DeAndre Ayton up and down season, started off pretty well, then completely fell out when he lost his defensive focus. Then he made a big resurgence towards the end and was talking like, how many clips did we see this year where it was like DeAndre Ayton, I finally figured out how to buy into my role and just focus on defense. Right. And then 2 weeks later, he go, 0 for 6 from the field and bitch that he didn't get the ball enough, Like, I think that the Ayton experience, as it has everywhere else, has kind of run thin. JJ Redick got caught saying, like, I can't play this guy when he missed a box out after box out in the playoffs. And there's some interesting centers on the market. I think we talked about Jalen Duren as a potential Lakers piece. So, I don't think that this is anything earth-shattering, and I don't really even have, like, great, strong feelings one way or the other. Like, these things cascade a little bit because their cap space will change dramatically depending on what happens with LeBron and what happens with Reeves, and that'll determine what they can do at the center position. And you could make very strong arguments going either direction on any of these kind of like options.
Quick note on DeAndre Ayton. He has crashed his way into my annual All Epiphany team, which is my team of players that love to have quotes like, well, this year I finally changed my diet and I really realized that I got to get into the right. Like Zion Williamson is the captain of the All Epiphany team for the last 3 years. DeAndre Ayton is now the starting center for my All Epiphany team.
I love that.
So my checklist is very similar to yours. I think I'm a little bit more specific here. I'm re-signing LeBron, and I'm doing it at a number less than $28 million per year. And I'm going to tell you why I'm going to do that here in a second. But I think that's, as long as I can get LeBron something less than the max, which all the reporting right now is that like LeBron is definitely not getting the max. And I think that's maybe the sticking point for the Lakers and might end up being the sticking point for LeBron. By the way, if LeBron wants to go to Cleveland, he's not going to get the max from them anyway. So I still think that for LeBron, in trying to project his future, not knowing anything, other than he loves Los Angeles, he's going to want to get paid an amount. I don't see a world where LeBron is taking the minimum, even to end up in Cleveland again. The mid-level exception might not be enough. The Lakers have his bird rights. They have the flexibility. It just makes the most sense. And I do, to your point, I think the fit works. And I think LeBron is willing to walk back into that kind of role where he's playing next to Luka and Reeves because he seemed to enjoy it. Knowing that every once in a while, like Luka and Reeves are going to miss games and he can just kind of toggle back into, queen of the chessboard LeBron James. So re-sign LeBron at a number less than $28 million a year. But I'm letting Rui walk, I'm letting Kennard walk, I'm letting Hayes walk, unless they're willing to take like really cheap deals. I'm going to replace them with unrestricted free agents at lower numbers. I'll bring back Marcus Smart if he opts in. If not, let him walk too. And if I have to replace those guys, I'm replacing them with guys like Gary Trent Jr., Matisse Thybulle. Could I get Robert Williams III on cheaper deals than those guys? Those are the guys I'm looking at. But those are supporting role players. My next thing is I'm making this trade. DeAndre Ayton, Dalton Connect, and the 25th pick in this draft to Dallas for Daniel Gafford. The Lakers do it because you get Gafford, who Luka Doncic obviously likes to play with. And Dallas does it because Gafford has an injury history. You take a swing on a guy like Connect, who's still on his rookie contract. I get a pick at the end of the first round in this pick, and I get DeAndre Ayton in there just for whatever. Who cares? I am building around Derek Lively anyway. You go ahead and take Gafford. I think that's awesome value for Dallas. And then I'm signing Peyton Watson to an aggressive offer sheet. That's the next one I'm doing. I'm obviously going to re-sign Reeves here, but his cap hold is going to be so much lower than what his next contract is going to be that I'm telling Reeves, look, we got you. Do not sign somewhere else. We got you. But order of operations, we need to wait to re-sign you so that we only have your cap hold on our books right now, and we need to go out and get a guy. And we got to go out and get a 3-and-D type of wing, a guy who could be our anchor defensively on the perimeter, and we're going to go out and get Peyton Watson. So I'm signing Peyton Watson to an aggressive offer sheet. I'm trying to steal him away from Denver. If all of these things go well, then I've got a starting lineup of Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, Peyton Watson, LeBron James, and Daniel Gafford. My bench is a little thin. It's potentially Marcus Smart. Maybe I get Gary Trent instead of Luke Kennard. Maybe I'm able to bring in Matisse Thybulle as another perimeter defender off the bench. I've still got Jared Vanderbilt hanging around. Maybe I'm sign another minimum center. Maybe Jackson Hayes comes back for the minimum, something like that. So it's a little bit thin on the bench, but I really like that starting lineup. And for me, if I'm the Lakers, it's not about winning the championship next season. It's about being really competitive next season, but starting the build around Luka. And I think that starting five is the build that you would ideally want around Luka. And then I have a couple of years to shore up the bench. Last thing here, back to that LeBron figure. Why am I bringing him back at less than $28 million? Because Jarrett Allen makes $28 million next year for Cleveland. And I'm re-signing LeBron. LeBron's getting his no-trade clause for that one-year deal. I think you're able to put a no-trade clause in a one-year deal. Either way. If eventually we get to a point in the middle of the year where it's just clearly not working and LeBron wants to go back to Cleveland for his farewell tour, we're trading you to Cleveland in the middle of the year. We're getting Jarrett Allen back. Boom. Now we got Jarrett Allen and Daniel Gafford. And now I feel really good about that.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of the optionality there for sure. I love Daniel Gafford. I always have, and I think we know how he feels about Luka. But you're right; like he's not going to be enough. He's got injury issues. He's never been able to play more than kind of like 24, 25 minutes per game. So I like the idea of bringing him in, and I like the idea of bringing in a very strong platoon partner, something that Gafford's very familiar with from his time with Derek Lively. So yeah, the Lakers though, like just zooming out for a second, they're so interesting because obviously we know at the top they're going to be set. They're probably going to bring back Reeves, I would imagine, and like Reeves, Luka right there, 1-2. That's enough offense, basically. Period.
And Luka has always played well next to a guard like Reeves, another guy who could just take the ball, whether it was Jalen Brunson or Kyrie. Those guys always work next to Luka.
Yeah, and filling out the rest of that roster, though, when all these guys are already going to be getting paid, is going to be such a tricky task. And Luka's not as young as he once was. You know what I mean? You start to wonder about, especially with the health issues he keeps having, you do start to wondering, like, what is the window? We talked about windows earlier. What's the window for this Lakers team to really, like, construct a true bona fide contender, given that all the other really good teams in the West are so young? That's what makes it so hard.
Yeah.
It's like the Spurs aren't going anywhere. The Thunder aren't going anywhere. The Thunder might never go anywhere. They might be the best team in the league for the next 10 years, with the way they're set up and all their draft picks, et cetera, et cetera. And they were able to get these guys in young and cheap, as we've already talked about. The Lakers do not have that option. They're not going to be able to get these high draft picks, most likely, where they're able to draft some of these guys and bring them up. So, like, it is going to be – the Lakers are going to be good as long as they have Luka, as long as they have Reeves, and as long as they have JJ Redick, who I think, frankly, did a great job in these playoffs. Like, I know they got swept, but I don't think there was anything tactically they could have done different. They just got talented.
That's and they played the Thunder tough. I mean, they led at halftime in two of those games,
and in the third quarter of a different one. Like these are they really did fine. They just ran out of talent, ran out of steam after 36, 24 minutes each time, and there's nothing that you can point to where it's like, yeah, they definitely made a tactical error here.
So I think that if you bring LeBron back is because I get the basketball IQ ceiling part of all of this that, frankly, as good as the Thunder and the Spurs are, they can't match it. And that part of the game. And, Luka could be the best player on the court in a playoff series. We've seen it before. Like, as long as I've got Luka, I at least feel like I've got a puncher's chance, and I'm one turned ankle, one lucky break away in the playoffs or finding myself in the NBA Finals, just like Luka did in Dallas.
Yeah, totally. I think that's right. You want to be in position to take advantage of good luck. That's basically what they need to do. And there are ways for them to do that. But I think people should be realistic about their ability to construct like a top flight contender that's going to go toe to toe with these guys 10 times out of 10.
Well said. And the Lakers getting a lucky break, not exactly unheard of
Good point.
That's it for this week's Good Take. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. RealGM Radio will be back on Monday with the Double Dribble with Mo Dakhil and Jared Dubin, who are going to catch you up on all of the hoops from the weekend.